The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive space. Some floated in the air like glowing clouds. Others stood on four legs with skin like tree bark. A few looked almost human but had blue skin and three eyes. The air hummed with the sound of translation devices turning alien words into something everyone could understand. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the back section marked for observers. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. His gray hair was cut short and his face showed the lines of a man who had seen many battles. Next to him sat Commander Lisa Harper, her brown hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Both humans watched as the aliens talked about them like they were not even there. Ambassador Zekthara stood at the center of the hall. She looked like a walking crystal sculpture, her body made of clear stone that changed colors when she moved. Right now she glowed red with anger. Her voice came through the translators cold and sharp. "The humans are a disease," she said. "They spread war wherever they go. They fight each other. They fight us. They cannot be trusted to live among civilized people." A creature that looked like a giant spider with too many eyes spoke next. "The humans have built more warships in 50 years than most species build in 1,000. What do they plan to do with all those weapons?" Another alien that resembled a floating jellyfish added its voice. "They refuse to follow our rules. They make their own laws. They do not respect the old ways that have kept peace in the galaxy for millions of years." Morrison listened without changing his expression. He had heard all these complaints before. The aliens were afraid of humans because humans were different. Where other species had spent thousands of years learning to talk through problems, humans still believed that sometimes you had to fight for what was right. Commander Harper leaned close to Morrison and whispered, "Sir, should we say something? These charges are not fair." Morrison shook his head slightly. "Let them talk, Lisa. They have already made up their minds. Nothing we say will change that." More aliens spoke against humanity. The Kethnari complained that human traders did not respect their customs. The Zelanti said human music and movies were corrupting their young people. The ancient Protheans, who had ruled the galaxy long before any other species reached the stars, declared that humans brought chaos wherever they went. Finally, the vote was called. Morrison watched as every alien delegate raised their hand, tentacle, claw, or other appendage to vote yes. The decision was final. Humanity would be locked away in their home solar system. No human ship could leave. No alien ship could enter. Earth would be alone. Ambassador Zekthara's crystal body flashed bright white as she read the final judgment. "By order of the Galactic Council, the species known as humans are hereby quarantined to the Sol system. This quarantine will remain in effect until such time as humanity proves it can live in peace with other civilized species." The Great Hall erupted in sounds of approval. Some aliens clicked their claws together. Others made musical notes. A few stamped their feet on the floor. They were celebrating the removal of what they saw as a threat to their peaceful galaxy. Morrison stood up slowly. The hall grew quiet as thousands of alien eyes turned to look at the human captain. He walked down to the speaking platform, his boots echoing in the sudden silence. "I have something to say," Morrison announced. Zekthara's crystal form flickered with annoyance. "You are only an observer here, Captain Morrison. You have no right to address this council." "Maybe not," Morrison replied. "But I am going to speak anyway." He turned to face the assembled aliens. "You call us dangerous. You say, we bring war and chaos. Maybe you are right. But let me tell you something about dangerous people. Sometimes dangerous people are the only ones who can protect you when real danger comes." A low rumble of disapproval went through the crowd. Morrison ignored it and continued. "You have all lived in peace for so long that you have forgotten what it takes to survive in a universe that does not care about your feelings. You think that talking can solve every problem. You believe that if you are nice enough and polite enough, nothing bad will ever happen to you." His voice grew stronger. "But someday something will come that cannot be reasoned with. Something that does not want to talk or make deals. Something that only understands force. When that day comes, You will wish you had dangerous friends like us. The hall exploded with angry sounds. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some stood up and pointed at Morrison with whatever they used for hands. Ambassador Zekthera glowed so bright red that it hurt to look at her. "Silence," she commanded. "Captain Morrison, your threats only prove that we have made the right choice. The galaxy does not need human aggression. We have maintained peace for over 1,000,000 years without your help." Morrison looked around the hall one more time. 1,000,000 years of peace, he said quietly. That is a long time to go without practice at fighting. I hope for your sake that you never need to remember how. He turned and walked back to where Commander Harper was waiting. Together they left the great hall while thousands of aliens watched them go. Outside in the corridor, Harper finally spoke. "Sir, what happens now?" Morrison looked out through a window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth. Soon, to be cut off from the rest of the galaxy. "Now we go home, Lisa. We go home and we wait." "Wait for what?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "For them to realize they made a mistake. And when they do, we will be ready to help them, whether they deserve it or not." The two humans walked toward their ship, leaving behind a galaxy that had chosen safety over strength, peace over preparedness. They did not know that in less than 3 years that choice would nearly destroy everything the aliens had spent 1,000,000 years building. But somewhere deep in space, something stirred. Something hungry. Something that had been traveling between the stars for longer than any civilization had existed. It was coming closer to the galaxy every day, drawn by the light of 1,000,000,000 suns and the promise of endless feeding. The galaxy had voted to remove its protectors. Soon, it would learn the price of that decision. 3 years had passed since the galaxy locked humans away in their home system. The quarantine barrier around Sol glowed with alien energy, keeping Earth cut off from the stars. But deep in space, far beyond the outer rim of known worlds, something moved in the darkness between galaxies. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stared at her computer screen in the Frontier Detection Array station. The numbers made no sense. She ran the scan again, then a third time. Each result was the same. Her hands shook as she reached for the emergency communication device. "This is Dr. Rodriguez at Station 12, she spoke into the device. "I need to report massive objects approaching from deep space. Size estimates show each one is bigger than a small moon. Count is over 300 and rising." The voice that answered her belonged to Admiral Vextar of the Andorian fleet. His species had 4 arms and skin like blue metal. They were known as the best military force in the galaxy, but even Admiral Vextar sounded worried. "Doctor, please confirm your readings. Objects that large should have been detected years ago." Elena looked at her screens again. The massive shapes were moving faster than anything she had ever seen. "Admiral, they just appeared on our sensors, like they came from outside our galaxy entirely. And sir, they are not slowing down." Within hours, every detection station along the outer rim was reporting the same thing. Hundreds of enormous objects racing toward the center of the galaxy. They moved in perfect formation, like a swarm of insects following their queen. The first world in their path was Helix Prime, a mining colony on the edge of Andorian space. 50,000 beings lived there, digging rare metals from the planet's crust. The colony's last transmission was short and filled with terror. "Something is blocking out our sun," the voice crackled through space. "The sky is full of shapes. They look like geometric patterns, but they keep changing. Oh gods, they are coming down to the surface. They are." The transmission ended. All contact with Helix Prime was lost. Admiral Vextar ordered the fastest ships in his fleet to investigate. The cruiser Cosmic Dawn reached Helix Prime 3 days later. Lieutenant Kevin Hayes stood on the bridge as they approached what should have been a busy mining world. Instead, they found nothing. "Sir?" the navigation officer reported. "There is no planet here. No debris. No asteroids. Nothing." Admiral Vextar used all 4 of his arms to grip the command chair. "That is impossible. Planets do not just disappear." But Helix Prime was gone. Not destroyed or broken apart. Simply gone. as if it had never existed. Even the star's light seemed dimmer, as though something had drained energy from the sun itself. Lieutenant Hayes ran every scan their ship could perform. "Admiral, I am detecting trace particles that do not match any known element. Whatever did, it consumed everything. The planet, the atmosphere, even pieces of the surrounding space." More reports came in from across the outer rim. The Veltari research station at Omega Point went silent. The Kethnari trading post at Far Reach stopped responding. One by one, entire worlds were vanishing without a trace. The first clear images of the invaders came from an automated probe near the Zelanti border. The pictures showed creatures that hurt to look at directly. They were geometric shapes that somehow moved like living things. Triangles connected to circles connected to squares, but the shapes changed constantly. Sometimes they looked solid. Sometimes they seemed to be made of pure energy. Dr. Rodriguez studied the images from her station. They do not follow the rules of physics as we understand them. Look at this one. It is a cube, but it has 7 sides. That should be impossible. The creatures moved through space without ships or engines. They simply willed themselves forward, bending reality around them as they traveled. When they reached a world, they surrounded it completely. Then the planet would begin to shrink, pulled apart piece by piece until nothing remained but empty space. Admiral Vexitar called for an emergency meeting of all military commanders in the Outer Rim. The holographic conference room filled with worried faces from a dozen different species. "The enemy shows no interest in communication," he reported. "They ignore all attempts at contact. They do not respond to warnings or threats. They simply consume everything in their path and move on." General Korth of the Prothean Defense Force spoke next. His ancient species had survived for millions of years by avoiding conflict. "Perhaps we can find a way to negotiate. Every intelligent species can be reasoned with." "These things are not like us," Admiral Vexitar replied. "They do not think like us. Watch this recording from our last encounter." The hologram showed a Andorian battle group trying to stop one of the creatures from eating a small research station. The warships fired their most powerful weapons directly at the geometric shape. The energy beam simply disappeared into the creature without causing any damage. Then the creature reached out with what might have been an arm and touched the lead ship. The entire vessel crumpled like paper and was absorbed into the creature's body. The room fell silent. These were military officers who had spent their lives preparing for war, but they had never seen anything like this. "How many of them are there?" asked Commander Jira of the Zelanti Navy. "Our best count shows over 800 separate entities," Admiral Vexitar answered. "Each one is capable of consuming an entire world. At their current speed, they will reach the inner systems in less than 6 months." The reality of their situation began to sink in. The galaxy's combined military forces had never faced an enemy that could not be talked to, bribed, or frightened away. These creatures wanted only one thing: to consume everything they found. "What do our tactical computers recommend?" General Korth asked. Admiral Vexitar's blue skin grew darker. "All combat simulations end the same way. Complete defeat of our forces within days of engagement. The enemy adapts to our weapons too quickly. They learn from each attack and become immune to it." As the meeting continued, a terrible thought began to form in the minds of everyone present. Their peaceful galaxy, built on millions of years of diplomacy and cooperation, was about to face something that understood only hunger and destruction. And the one species that might know how to fight such an enemy was locked away behind a quarantine barrier, banned from the galaxy they had once tried to protect. The creatures kept coming, eating world after world, growing stronger with each meal. Soon they would reach the heart of civilization itself, and the galaxy's peaceful defenders would have to face an enemy they had no idea how to stop. The Galactic Council building had never seen such panic. Delegates who normally spent their time discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges now faced reports of entire star systems going dark. The Great Hall buzzed with fear as ambassadors from dozens of species tried to make sense of the disaster sweeping across their galaxy. Ambassador Zekthera stood at the center podium, her crystal body flickering between different colors as stress overwhelmed her usual control. Around her, the other council members shifted nervously in their seats. The proud Protheans, who had ruled the galaxy for eons, looked confused and frightened. The logical Zelanti kept running calculations on their portable computers, searching for solutions that did not exist. 17 star systems have gone completely silent in the past month, Zekathara announced. Our scouts report finding nothing but empty space where worlds once stood. The enemy shows no signs of slowing down. High Commander Ruth Martinez watched the proceedings from a hidden observation post on Earth. Despite the quarantine, human intelligence had never stopped monitoring galactic communications. She sat in a dark room filled with screens and listening devices, surrounded by her best analysts. "Ma'am, the Veltari 3rd Fleet just engaged the enemy at Terminus Station," reported Sergeant Danny Cole. He was young, barely 25, but had proven skilled at interpreting alien military communications. The battle lasted 14 minutes before all contact was lost. Martinez nodded grimly. Human war computers had predicted this outcome weeks ago. The galaxy's military forces were designed for peacekeeping missions and showing force to intimidate rebels. They had no experience fighting an enemy that could not be intimidated or reasoned with. Back in the council chambers, Admiral Vextar was giving his latest battle report. His forearms moved frantically as he tried to explain their failures. "We hit them with everything we had," he said. "Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even experimental disruptor weapons. The creatures absorbed our attacks and grew stronger. Then they began using our own weapons against us." The council erupted in shocked voices. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries were now united in their terror. Councillor Jethra of the Zelanti stepped forward. He was normally calm and logical, but now his voice shook with barely controlled fear. "Our computer models show the enemy will reach the core worlds within 8 weeks. We need new options. We need to consider choices we have never made before." The hall grew quiet. Everyone knew what he meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The humans. The dangerous, aggressive humans they had locked away 3 years. Ego Ambassador Zekthara's crystal form dimmed to its lowest setting. "You are suggesting we contact the quarantine species?" The word hung in the air like a confession of failure. These were the same beings they had called a plague on civilization. The same species they had declared too dangerous to exist among peaceful people. Now facing complete destruction, those very qualities seemed less like threats and more like exactly what they needed. Councillor Mirazol of the Kethnari spoke with painful honesty. "Our fleets are built for exploration and peaceful contact with new species. Human fleets are built for war. Perhaps it is time to admit which approach this situation requires." General Korth of the ancient Protheans stood up slowly. His species had ruled the galaxy when most others were still learning to use fire. He had never imagined asking for help from such a young and violent race. "The humans fought wars against each other for thousands of years before they reached the stars," he said quietly. "They know things about combat that we have forgotten, or never learned. They understand enemies that cannot be reasoned with." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that asking humans for help would be admitting their entire way of life was wrong. Others pointed out that their way of life would not matter if everyone was dead. On Earth, Commander Martinez received fragments of the council discussion through her spy network. She called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership. President Alex Turner joined them by video link from the Capitol. "The situation is simple," Martinez told the assembled officers. "The galaxy that rejected us is about to be destroyed. We can let them burn and hope the enemy stops before reaching Earth, or we can act while we still have potential allies." Colonel Pete Johnson, her second in command, pulled up tactical displays showing the enemy's advance. "Ma'am, based on their current path, they will reach our solar system in approximately 18 months whether we help or not." President Turner leaned forward on the screen. "Admiral, what are our chances if we fight alone?" Martinez looked at the battle reports her analysts had compiled. "Against an enemy this large and adaptive? Very poor, sir. But fighting alongside galactic forces combining our different approaches to warfare, we might have a real chance." Dr. Nancy Brooks from the Xenobiology Institute had been studying intercepted data about the swarm creatures. There is something else to consider. These entities appear to learn from whatever weapons are used against them. The galactic forces have been using the same basic tactics for centuries. We represent something completely new and unpredictable. The discussion lasted through the night. Military officers debated strategy while politicians worried about the risks of breaking the quarantine. In the end, the decision was obvious to everyone. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Zekthara finally admitted what everyone was thinking. We need to send a message to Earth. We need to ask for their help. The hall erupted in arguments. Some delegates still insisted that humans were too dangerous to trust. Others pointed out that they were all going to die anyway if they did nothing. The vote was close, but fear of extinction won over pride. The council agreed to send a carefully worded message to Earth. Not a plea for help, but a request for consultation on the current crisis. The message reached Earth within hours. Admiral Martinez read the formal diplomatic language with bitter amusement. 3 years ago, humans had been called a disease that threatened galactic civilization. Now they were being asked for advice on how to save that same civilization. Her response was brief and to the point. We are coming. Try not to shoot us when we arrive. Within days, Earth's shipyards were working around the clock. The quarantine barrier that had kept humans trapped in their solar system for 3 years was about to be broken. Not by invasion or rebellion, but by the very people who had been locked away coming to save those who had imprisoned them. The galaxy was about to learn what human ships looked like when they came in peace, and what human warriors fought like when they came to war. The message from the Galactic Council reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her office at Stellar Defense Command, reading the carefully written request for help. She had taken over Earth's military after the quarantine began 3 years ago. Her job had been to prepare for the day when the galaxy might change its mind about humanity. Consultation, she said to Colonel Pete Johnson, who stood beside her desk. They want our consultation on their little problem. Johnson pulled up the latest intelligence reports on his tablet. Ma'am, our scouts estimate the swarm will reach Earth in about 18 months if they keep moving at current speed. Whether we help the aliens or not, we are going to face this enemy. Sullivan nodded and called for an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Within hours, the planet's top military and political leaders gathered in the secure conference room. Beneath the Capitol, President Alex Turner took his seat at the head of the long table. The situation is clear, Sullivan began. We can let the galaxy burn and hope the swarm stops before reaching us, or we can fight now while we still have allies to help us. General Robert Hayes, head of the Marine Corps, leaned back in his chair. Admiral, these are the same aliens who called us dangerous 3 years ago. They locked us away like criminals. Now they want our help? Yes, Sullivan replied simply. And we are going to give it to them. The room erupted in arguments. Some officers wanted revenge for the quarantine. Others worried about trusting species that had betrayed humanity before. But Sullivan had already made up her mind. Listen to me, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. In 18 months, those creatures will be at our doorstep whether we help the galaxy or not. Our only choice is whether we face them alone or with allies beside us. Dr. Nancy Brooks from the Xenobiology Institute had been studying all available data about the swarm. She stood up and activated the wall display, showing images of the geometric creatures. There is something important about these entities, she said. They adapt to whatever weapons are used against them. The galactic forces have been using the same basic tactics for thousands of years. Every time they attack, the swarm learns and becomes immune to their weapons. She switched to tactical analysis charts. But we represent something completely different. Our weapons, our strategies, our entire approach to warfare is unlike anything in their databases. We are the unknown factor that might give us an advantage. President Turner listened to the debate for 2 hours before making his decision. Admiral Sullivan, you have authorization to break the quarantine. Prepare our fleets for immediate departure. The room fell silent. Breaking the quarantine meant going against the direct orders of the Galactic Council. It meant risking war with the very people they were trying to help. "Sir," Colonel Johnson asked, "what if they attack us when we arrive?" Sullivan smiled grimly. "Then we will remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place." Within days, every shipyard in the solar system was working at maximum capacity. The quarantine had given humanity 3 years to build and prepare. Now those preparations would be put to the test. The human fleet that assembled at the edge of the solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where alien ships were smooth and elegant, designed for exploration and peaceful contact, human vessels were built for one purpose: war. The flagship Washington led the formation. Captain Steve Reynolds stood on its bridge, watching as 200 warships took their positions. Each ship carried weapons that had been developed during humanity's long history of conflict: kinetic cannons that could punch through armor, missile systems that could track and destroy multiple targets, energy weapons that could slice through hull plating like paper. "All ships report ready, sir," his communications officer announced. Reynolds opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Reynolds aboard the Washington. In a few minutes, we will break through the quarantine barrier that has kept us locked away for 3 years. We go not as conquerors, but as defenders. The galaxy that rejected us now needs us to survive." He paused, looking out at the stars that had been forbidden to humanity for so long. "Some of you may wonder why we are helping people who called us dangerous. The answer is simple: because it is the right thing to do. Because when faced with extinction, all thinking beings deserve a chance to live." The fleet moved forward toward the glowing barrier that surrounded the solar system. Human engineers had spent months studying the alien technology, learning how to pass through it without triggering automatic defenses. As the Washington approached the barrier, Reynolds felt the ship shake slightly. Energy patterns danced across. The hull as the quarantine field recognized the vessel and tried to stop it. But human modifications held, and the ship passed through unharmed. One by one, the entire fleet broke through the barrier. For the first time in 3 years, human ships sailed freely among the stars. The journey to the rendezvous point took 6 days. As they traveled, Reynolds received updates from galactic forces. The news was not good. 3 more star systems had gone dark. The swarm was adapting faster than anyone had expected. When the human fleet finally arrived at Kepler Station, the sight that greeted them would have been impossible 3 years earlier. Ships from 17 different species held formation, waiting for humanity's arrival. Veltari crystal ships floated beside Kethnari metal vessels. Ancient Prothean dreadnoughts shared space with sleek Andorian cruisers. Admiral Sullivan's voice came across all communication channels. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. Today we fight not as separate species, but as one galaxy against a common enemy. The swarm does not care about our past conflicts or our different ways of life. To them we are all just food to be consumed." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But they made one mistake. They gave us time to come together. Time to combine our strengths, human aggression with alien precision, human tactics with alien technology. Today we show them what the galaxy can do when it fights as one." The combined fleet began moving toward the swarm's projected path. In the command centers of human ships, officers worked alongside alien advisors. Veltari energy shields were fitted to human fighters. Kethnari sensors were linked to human targeting systems. Species that had never trusted each other before now shared their most advanced technology. Commander Amy Foster coordinated mixed fighter squadrons from the carrier New York. "Red Squadron, you have Zelanti pilots on your wing. Blue Squadron, your Andorian partners will handle long-range scanning. Stay in formation and watch each other's backs." The preparations continued as they traveled toward their destiny. Soon they would face an enemy that had consumed dozens of worlds and showed no sign of stopping. But they would not face it alone. For the first time in galactic history, every major species was fighting together for the same cause. The battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. The combined fleet moved through space like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Human warships flew beside alien vessels in perfect formation. The Washington led the charge with Captain Steve Reynolds on the bridge, watching as his scanners, Picked up the approaching enemy. Contact ahead, his sensor officer announced. Multiple swarm entities, size classification enormous. Count as over 200 separate creatures. Reynolds opened communication channels to the entire fleet. All ships, this is the Washington. Enemy contact confirmed. Remember your training. Stick to your assigned partners and do not let these things adapt to your attacks. The swarm appeared, on their screens like a nightmare made real. Geometric shapes the size of moons floated through space, constantly changing form. Triangles became circles, became squares, all connected by streams of energy that hurt to look at directly. They moved without engines, bending space around them as they advanced. Admiral Sullivan's voice came across all frequencies from her command ship. All units, commence attack. Show them what we can do when we work together. The battle began with the alien forces using their traditional tactics. Feltari ships fired beams of pure energy while Andorian cruisers launched quantum torpedoes. The weapons struck the swarm creatures and seemed to cause damage at first. But within minutes, the entities began to adapt, their forms shifting to absorb and deflect the incoming fire. Enemy adaptation confirmed, reported Commander Amy Foster from the fighter carrier New York. They are learning our allies' weapons just like before. That was when the humans showed the galaxy something it had never seen. Instead of continuing with the same attacks, they switched tactics completely. Where the aliens used energy weapons, humans fired solid projectiles. Where aliens launched guided missiles, humans used unguided rockets that moved in unpredictable patterns. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Phillips coordinated the human assault from the cruiser Boston. All human ships begin chaos protocol. No repeated attack patterns, keep changing everything every 30 seconds. The swarm creatures tried to adapt to the human weapons, but every time they learned to counter one attack, the humans switched to something completely different. Kinetic cannons became plasma rifles, became missile swarms, became ramming attacks. Captain Reynolds watched as one of his destroyers flew straight at a swarm entity, firing every weapon it had before pulling away at the last second. The creature tried to grab the ship but missed as the human pilot performed a role that no alien would have attempted. "That is impossible," came a voice from Admiral Vextar on the Andorian flagship. "No ship can maneuver like that." "Human pilots can," Reynolds replied. "We have been flying dangerous missions for centuries. This is just another day at work for them." The tide of battle began to turn as human unpredictability met alien precision. Kethnari targeting systems guided human missiles to weak points that the aliens had identified. Veltari shields protected human fighters as they performed impossible attack runs. Zelanti computers calculated new weapon combinations that the humans could switch to before the swarm adapted. But the enemy was learning too. The largest swarm entity, a massive geometric shape that seemed to be their leader, began coordinating the others more effectively. Smaller creatures formed protective walls around the larger ones. Energy streams connected them all, sharing information about human tactics. Commander Foster saw the change first. "Admiral, they are adapting to our adaptation. They are learning how to predict our unpredictability." The battle reached its turning point when Captain Reynolds made a decision that no alien commander would have considered. The Washington was taking heavy damage, its shields failing under concentrated swarm attacks. The enemy leader had focused its attention on the human flagship, trying to eliminate the source of the chaotic tactics. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer urged. "Hull breaches on 7 decks, engines at 50% power." Reynolds looked at the massive swarm entity bearing down on his ship. It was easily 100 times larger than the Washington, its geometric form shifting as it prepared to consume them. But he noticed something the alien computers had missed. Deep inside the creature's core there was a bright spot that pulsed with energy. The entity's heart. "All hands, this is the captain," Reynolds announced to his crew and the entire fleet. "We came here to save the galaxy. Sometimes saving something means being willing to lose everything for it." He turned to his helmsman. "Set course directly for the enemy leader's core, full speed." "Sir, that is a suicide run," his executive officer protested. "No," Reynolds replied calmly. "It is a victory run." The Washington accelerated toward the massive swarm entity, firing every weapon it had. The creature reached out with energy tentacles trying to stop the human ship, but Reynolds ordered evasive maneuvers that kept them just out of reach. As they approached the core, Reynolds armed the ship's self-destruct system. "For Earth," he said quietly. "For the galaxy. For everyone who deserves a chance to live." The Washington struck the swarm leader's core and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The massive entity convulsed, its geometric form breaking apart as energy cascaded through its body. The explosion triggered a chain reaction that spread to other swarm creatures connected by energy streams. One by one, the geometric entities began to collapse. Without their leader to coordinate them, they lost cohesion and fled toward empty space, their formation broken, and their advance stopped. The remaining ships of the combined fleet watched in stunned silence as the swarm retreated. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, rescue ships searched for survivors while repair crews worked on damaged vessels. The casualties were heavy, but the victory was complete. The swarm had been scattered and would not threaten the galaxy again for generations, if ever. Ambassador Zekthera found Admiral Sullivan in the medical bay of Kepler Station. The crystal being's form was subdued and humble as she approached the human commander. "Admiral," Zekthera said quietly, "the Galactic Council wishes to formally apologize for our treatment of your people. The quarantine will be lifted immediately. We were wrong about humanity." Sullivan looked up from the medical scanner treating her radiation burns. "Ambassador, we did not come here for apologies. We came because it was the right thing to do." "Yes," Zekthara replied, her crystal form flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as sadness. "Perhaps that is the most human thing of all, to help those who have wronged you simply because it is right." As the surviving ships began their journey home, they carried with them a new understanding. The galaxy was stronger when all its people worked together. The qualities that had once seemed dangerous in humanity had proven to be exactly what everyone needed when facing true danger. The stars belonged to all of them now, and they would never forget the price of unity or the value of those willing to sacrifice everything for others.